Hi, my name's Penny. Welcome to my channel. Today I thought I would do the reader problems tag. I will link the original tag video down below. But let's get into the questions. The first question is, you've got 20,000 books in your TBR. How do you decide what to read next? So at the moment I am really focusing on making progress on the books that are series that I've partially read. A lot of those I'm still waiting for the next book in the series, but where I can, I'm trying to catch up. That's definitely where I'm starting with my TBR, which is not 20,000 books, but some days it does seem like a very long list. Yeah, I'm focusing on series, so that's where I'd start at the moment. I'm really looking forward to, once I catch up on series, just being able to read whatever feels like the most exciting book in the moment. There is also a lot of the books that I read come from the library, so library availability definitely has an impact on what books I would choose next as well. So the second question is, you're halfway through a book and not loving it. What do you do? Do you quit or are you committed? So the amount of books that I have DNF'd in my life is very small, probably less than a handful. I am definitely a completionist. I like to complete things. That is something I've been trying to do less of though, because I feel like it is a bit of a waste of your life to read bad books, especially when there are so many good books out there. But that said, sometimes you can hate the beginning of a book, but the end makes up for it. So then sometimes it's worth pushing through. And how are you going to know? How are you going to know which times are the ones you should push through? So in general, I would just keep pushing through. It would have to be pretty bad for me to put it aside. I might still just skim it though, just to get it done. So question number 3 is, the end of the year is close, but you're so far away from your Goodreads challenge. Do you try to catch up, and how? So I think I had this happen a couple of years ago. And I did try to catch up. I read a lot of really shorter books, participated in more readathons. I mean, it tends to work out quite well with the Christmas holiday. Near the end of the year, there's usually a lot more time for reading. But on the other side of that, I have ever since then just tried to be very conservative with my Goodreads goals so that I never feel like it's a challenge to meet. It's just enough to feel like a challenge, but not enough to ever really worry me that I wouldn't make it, or that I couldn't make it if I put a little bit of effort in. Unless my life went fundamentally into disaster land, in which case my Goodreads goal is really going to be the least of my worries. So number 4 is, the covers of a series you love do not match. How do you cope? And I'm looking at my bookshelf over here and I can see the worst offenders, and they're very annoying, but life, eh? It's just a bit disappointing sometimes. I will try to get matching covers where I can. I mean, I only buy and keep books that I really like these days, so I can specifically order the particular one that has the matching cover, although it's really annoying when you order one that like on Book Depository, where the picture matches and then it arrives and it's not the right cover, and you're like, that's very annoying. And of course sometimes they just change the cover and there's nothing you can do. I just try to get the prettiest cover I can. So number 5 is, everyone and their mother loves a book that you do not like. Who do you bond over shared feelings? So for books that I don't like, it can be nice when you find someone who also doesn't like them and you can be like, thank God I'm not crazy. But also, if there's a book I don't like, I don't really want to talk about it that much anyway, so I don't really need to bond over those shared feelings. If anything, if I see a booktuber who has shared opinions with me about a book I didn't like, I'll be like, yeah, I agree, so that they know they're not crazy as well. Or at least that we're crazy together. So number 6 is, you're reading a book and are about to start crying in public. How do you deal? So I am a big crier. I cry all the time. All the time. I can think of a few times when I've been reading a book in public and I've started to cry. I remember this one particular time I was rereading, I think the last book in the Magic Porn trilogy. I forget what that trilogy is called. The Vaniel trilogy. And if you've read that trilogy, you know the last book has some very sad moments, and I knew they were coming, and I was in the park reading them, and I started just like bawling my eyes out, and there was this group of girls sitting not that far away from me, and they kept looking over at me, looking very concerned for me, and so I wasn't really embarrassed. I was more like, oh, you don't need to worry about me, I'm fine, it's just my book. So I think I went somewhere else so that they didn't have to watch me cry and be worried. But in general, I will, if it's really bad, I might try to wait until I get home to continue reading it. Another trick is to wear sunglasses. Sunglasses are great for hiding that you're crying. It doesn't work so well in the winter, but in the summer you can get away with it. And I think my primary kind of reaction is to try to wait and read it later when I'm by myself, if I can tell that it's starting to get to that emotional part. Sometimes you're too wrapped up in the book, so it's hard to put it down, but it also depends how soon after that you're going to need to be a rational human being. So if you're going to have to talk to people soon, then maybe crying isn't the best option and you should wait. So number 7 is a sequel of a book that you love just came out, but you've forgotten a lot from the prior novel. Will you reread the book? For me, this depends on a few things. Kind of one is how much you loved it. If I really loved it, then there is no price to going back and rereading it again. So I will go back and read it again because especially if I really loved it, I want to be as prepared as possible for the next book. But there are definitely cases where I will just look up a synopsis. There are also books where you kind of know that they're likely to give you a recap, and so you can just kind of rely on that recap. That's especially true of like longer series. I also think sometimes when it's like the third book in a series, if there's long gaps between each of them, and by the time you got to the second one you'd forgotten, so you go back and read the first one and then you read the second one, and then when you get to the third you've forgotten the first and the second one again, then going back and reading the first and the second again is like, oh, that's a lot of work. So you have to really love it if I'm going to put that much in. There are a few books that I've done that for. It gets really crazy when it's a really long book series. I do want to. The last book from the Kate Daniels series is coming out soon, and I am actually tempted to go back and reread all 10 books in one like big go, but I haven't quite decided. 10 books is quite a big commitment. So number 8 is you do not want anybody borrowing your books. How do you politely tell them that? I don't really have this problem. The main reason that I keep books is because I love them and I want to reread them, but also because if I love a book, I want other people to read it, and so I keep it so that I can lend it out to other people. And even though I do like keeping my books in good condition, like I know once I lent a book to someone and then I went to talk to them and they had it and they'd folded it around, like they were keeping their place in the book by folding the cover over and like putting it down, and I was not really very happy with that. But you know what, I wanted them to read the book, I wanted to talk to them about the book, so I let it go. And I know there have been times when I've borrowed stuff from people and I haven't necessarily treated it well, although I try to treat stuff well now, but sometimes you make mistakes and you damage stuff you've borrowed people from. So I try to be forgiving like the people have forgiven me in the past. And like in general, if someone wants to borrow a book from me, I kind of take that as a compliment that they think the books that I have are likely to be good books. Number 9 is reading ADD. You picked up and put down 5 books in the last month. How do you get over your reading slump? So as I said, I'm a completionist, so I don't really tend to do that kind of thing. It is interesting though, because I used to get into reading slumps more often in the past when I would only read one book at a time. So I used to never let myself read more than one book at a time. I thought that it was pretty much impossible. How could you keep two multiple stories in your head? Wouldn't that be confusing? But now I tend to listen and read to books in multiple formats. So just started listening to audiobooks. I also have a Kindle. I sometimes read books on I often read books on my phone on overdrive, as well as I like to have a physical book beside my bed so that I can read that before bed, because a physical book helps you sleep better than an electronic book. And so because I'm reading in all these different formats, I often have multiple books on the go now. And I realized just the other day, because I was also reading a graphic novel on my desktop computer on overdrive, I realized that I was reading 5 books, and that I thought, oh, 5 books is actually maybe a few too many to have on the go. Let's try and finish something. But I do find that reading more books at once kind of staves off the reading slump, because it's likely that at least one of the books that you're reading is one that you like, or one that's keeping you engaged and excited. And so you can keep, like, that'll keep pulling you back to reading, and then it only takes a little bit of willpower to work through the other books that you're reading that maybe aren't quite as exciting. And if those ones take a little bit longer, then that's okay. So number 10 is, there are so many new books you'd like to read. How many do you buy? So that's reality. There are definitely so many new books that I would like to read. Although, as I said, I'm trying to focus on finishing off old books at the moment, so that's not too much of a stress. The other factor is that most new books that I do read, I tend to get out from the library, because a lot of like new books that lots of people are talking about are available at the library. So why not try them from the library, and if they become a book that I love, that I'd love to keep and reread, or that I'd like to lend to other people, then I can go and buy it. So really it would depend on how many of those new books actually turned out to be books that I love. So then number 11 is, after you've bought the books that you can't wait to read, how long do they sit on your shelf before you get to them? And this is part of why I massively cut down on the number of books that I buy. So I used to just buy books all the time whenever I saw something I thought I might like to read. And now I have a whole over here. You can't see them. I don't do my videos over there because the lighting is atrocious over there. But I couldn't put my shelves here. So anyway, I have so many books over there that I need to get to, and that I've bought, most of them pretty cheap, but still I need to read some of those, perhaps get rid of the ones that I'm never going to read again before I let myself expand on the rest of my book collection. I found when I was buying a lot of books, when I then looked at my shelves, so many of them were ones that I would never want to reread. Or if people were like, oh, I'd like to borrow a book, what do you recommend? I'd look at my shelves and I'd be like, I don't know, I can't even find the good ones. Whereas now I can just really clearly be, you know what, these 2 sections of shelves, these are the ones that are good. I recommend any of these. And so I'm really hoping to read and then clear out the rest of my shelves before I then try to fill up. And I would just really like to have a whole bunch of shelves which were all books that I love. That's kind of how I've always dreamed, ever since I was young, of having a library, but I've always dreamed of all those books being books that I've loved. So that's what I'm working towards. So to actually answer the question, if I buy a book these days, I tend to read it within the next month or 2. I did actually just buy a couple of books the other day. I bought the 4th and 5th books from the Thirst or Last Vampire series by Christopher Pike. I'm planning to read number 4 this month, and then number 5 I'll get to next month. So I'm reading them pretty quickly. So that was the reader problems tag. I don't know if those problems are ones that you suffer from. I'd say maybe about half of them are ones that plague me. The rest of them I managed to avoid, or at least ignore. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.